What's up with our boys? It's a question very much front of mind for Steve Sobota. He's the co-CEO of an organisation called Big Buddy. The charity's been matching boys without a dad in their life with positive male role models for nearly 25 years. We know that boys' achievement at school has been lagging behind girls and that boys are more at risk of behavioural and mental health issues. So what can be done to help support boys as they grow towards adulthood? Steve has some thoughts based on his near 2 decades of work with the organisation. Kia ora, Steve. Good morning.
Kia ora, Catherine. Thank you.
So just remind people not familiar about Big Buddy, when it was set up and what it's done all this time.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been around for about 28 years now. Originally, we were a smaller program with Man Alive, which is a support services for men and boys, which is actually quite unique in itself, and that's based in West Auckland. But after a few years, we decided that, if we're going to go a bit more national, to become our own charitable trust. So in 2003, we did that, and I've been with the organisation for about 20 years. And it was looking at... Actually, it was through the youth courts and seeing young men go through the justice system, and when they were kind of interviewed, they found out that over 80% of these boys didn't have a dad or a positive male role model in their lives. So they thought, well, what can we do that's more preventative rather than at the bottom of the cliff? Let's do something that's more preventative and early intervention, where we get some good guys, alongside these boys to be a good male role model and to show them a different way.
So tell me, over the years, what the key factors in that has been. Obviously, you've got to do a lot of vetting. You've got to do, I imagine, a good deal of training. And also, you want people who can stick a reasonable distance. What's been the experience with it, Steve?
Yeah, exactly. We do an extensive screening process. Obviously, we want the guys to be safe and reliable. So we do that over about an 8-week period, including home interviews and character referees, a full police check. And we also go to the extent of doing a psych evaluation. So that's actually a psych interview with somebody, a professional that they see. So we want to make sure the guys are safe, they know what they're up for when they go through this process, and when they come out the other side, and one of the bonuses is they know a little bit more about themselves, which is a good starting point for getting to know a boy. It's also another opportunity for us to get to know them really well and to know what sort of boy we want to match them with. So we're interviewing boys at the same time, we're going into their homes, we're making sure that they're up for this as well, that they know what it's about, that they know that it's at least 12 months of being matched to a man in the community who's going to be safe and look after them. And then there's a huge, as you'd expect, a huge leap of faith for a mum or a caregiver to sort of hand her over to this guy who's going to start building a relationship with this boy, a bit like an uncle or an older brother, depending on the Big Buddy's age. And then they start meeting on a weekly basis for 2 to 3 hours on a weekend, going out, kicking a ball around, having an ice cream, going to the museum, just everyday things. But it's a relationship model, so there's no goals that either the big buddy or the boy, the little buddy we call them, needs to achieve. It's really about building a connection of safety and trust, and as that foundation builds, getting to know the boy a bit better and giving him other opportunities that he might not have had before that.
How long typically do those relationships last?
Yeah, so initially we're asking for a 12-month commitment from a volunteer, and we hope after a year that it becomes less about volunteering and more about the real relationship, and that there is we've talked about attachment on this program before, that they connect, and there's an attachment both from the boy but also from the adult, from the man, and that we have a review basically at 12 months and to see how it's going, but also to acknowledge that we'd love it to continue. And so over the years that we've been going, 1,250 odd matches. Our average kind of match length is 3.5 years, which for a volunteer is pretty good. Yeah.
And how have you gone about recruiting? Because people are so time poor, complex lives we have these days. It's often why kids need a bit of need someone extra.
Yeah, it has become more challenging, and even since COVID, there has been a drop in numbers. I think it's the male-female ratio of volunteering in New Zealand. There's about 30% are male, And so we're only after that percentage of the population. And then with the 20 to 30% drop since COVID, we struggle at times to get men to volunteer, because men also, they're out there, like women, are coaching, and they don't necessarily advertise the fact that they're doing these other things in the community or church groups, etc. So yeah, we get out there. We, someone just mentioned as I was coming into the studio, they've seen our billboards up around town. We get as much free advertising as we can and PR, but we put things out. We share stories. We get a lot of women, actually, either partners or friends of men, to sort of give them a bit of a nudge and say, "Well, you'll be good at this," because a lot of guys out there don't back themselves to actually go out and do something good, or be a volunteer, or go and hang out with a boy. And there's been stigma in the past around this, but I'm kind of finding that the younger generation of guys, kind of the millennials and Gen Z guys, are more sort of willing to come forward and just get on with it. So yeah, we get a mixture of guys from their 20s, which is kind of more of an older brother type, to guys more, empty nesters with the children leaving home, or early retirement, or that are more the grandfatherly figures, and everything in between. So yeah, we do our best to get the word out there, and get as many guys coming and volunteering as possible.
20 years is a long time, Steve, and I can't help thinking that I think it was 2005 that, what was it? Was that when Facebook started? It was a key year.
Could have been, yeah.
You when you started doing this work, we were fairly nascent in the social media environment that we have now, which is almost all-consuming sometimes for kids.
Yeah.
But when you look at what you learned over what boys need, particularly boys who might be absent a dad or an active dad in their lives, what's changed, what stayed the same?
Yeah, well, I think the media has a lot to answer for as far as what's coming at children these days. And it's a challenge. I mean, I know in my family, even, looking at us at some stage and seeing everyone on devices, it's really a challenge to push those away and go, actually, no, let's do something different, or let's do something like we used to do. Even having dinner at the table each night is a challenge. And then if you take that back to a single parent family with potentially multiple children that they're looking after, that's even a bigger issue, because I think a big issue for boys, not only boys, is isolation and that loneliness. And the other thing with devices is it's easy to lock away in a room, get on a device, and anything that's coming up in that child's life, whether it be at school or in this home life, might not get talked about. So I think it's actually, how do we get our boys to talk and be in a situation where there is space to do that in their own time. Now, I often hear stories from big buddies that when I say, "Oh, how's it going?" and what's the boy, how's he going as far as chatting about who he is and what's going on, the big buddy will often say, "Oh, well, he doesn't say much, but we're driving on the way home from the outing, and this is a couple of hours later, and all of a sudden he pops up with something, and he's sitting beside me in the car, and he says something that's going on at school, and we had a good little chat about that, and then I dropped him off, and I'll pick him up next week." So it's often that space that boys need, particularly, I think, to be physical, do the physical things, have the connection, but not necessarily talk at the beginning. How are you? What's going on? If you say that right at the beginning of the connection with them, they're often like, "Oh, nothing much." But I think it just takes time. So we need to give space to boys to have that time.
There's
to
another
process.
thing about the car. You're sitting side by side.
Yes, exactly.
There's no direct eye contact.
Yep.
There's none of that immediate kind of confrontation.
Yeah, that really helps.
And it is a fantastic place to have
those chats.
Conversation with those extra sort of stimuli, or those extra signals not in play, yeah?
Exactly, yeah.
So that is one issue. The complexity of their lives, though, and I'm interested in where you are at, if there are, who does this work for and who does it not work for? Because there can be really complex needs in any young person's lives. And how do you sort of work that out when making a match, or even whether you should be?
Sure. Yeah, over the 20 years, I've seen the complexities develop, and I think it's I think families are more isolated as well. There's mental and physical health of the caregiver sometimes is an influence when we talk to them and what they're going through, not only for their children or child, but what they're going through. Isolation from extended family, learning difficulties or challenges at school for the child, poverty, as we know, and with the the crisis around the cost of living. So I think these are all factors. So we kind of do a triage at the beginning, and we can't always help every family, but what we do is our best to refer families on to other services. But it's just that conversation, that first point of contact of listening to a mum or a caregiver about their situation and what they're going through. And sometimes that's the first, we're the first point of contact for them about getting help. So it's talking through and finding out about the boy, and because we're in the back of our mind, we're thinking about volunteers, just normal guys in the community, good guys, safe guys, but guys that are have varying experiences of being around children. So we want to make sure it's a successful relationship. We don't want to set a boy up for failure or having a relationship not work out. We do our best, but we don't always. We're not always successful, but a lot of the time we are. So we want to make sure that we are the right service for that boy, and otherwise, refer them on to other things. But generally, when we see a boy, they could often be very quiet and very reticent, but even our mentoring managers who do great work meeting these boys in their home and just sort of getting an idea of who they are and what sort of big buddy they could be matched with. And, often it's one interest, like a boy I matched many years ago. He was mad about fishing, and I knew this big buddy I had coming up in his area was a great fisherman and he loved kayak fishing. And so I matched them up. And, this is like 14 years ago. This boy's now 24. He's out there in the world. He's moved overseas. He's doing well. And that anchor of, fishing together and that support and those car rides, was just enough. It doesn't have to be complex or having to figure the boy out. It's really just about being together, finding out where there is an interest, coming back, showing up time and time again.
What about in schools and boys' experience of school?
Yeah, I think there's some differences, I think boys need different to what a lot of schools provide, and some schools are doing really great work with boys specifically. I think their physicality or their need to move, I think you've talked about that in the past, and getting outside, being in nature, not spending hours, sitting down. I think male school teachers, as we know, there's a lack of male school teachers, particularly in primary and intermediate school, those formative years for boys where they're looking out for those men. So if they don't have a dad in the home, and they're not seeing those role models in school either, they might not be seeing them at all. So those good men in schools, and often boys gravitate to them, or the coaches that are taking sports, or the PE teacher if it's a male, I think they are really important people in boys' lives as well, to take a little bit of time. But I think, boys are struggling at school. They're not going through to, tertiary education as much as they used to. I think they're just being missed and not provided for.
The isolation that you mention is... there's a greater risk of it becoming more prolonged because of the digital world. And I know boys are into their gaming and, they love their gaming. Some of them, a lot of them,
they
right?
do.
So, and that's fine. But like every other digital experience, it's you got to try and balance it against doing other things in life, and also it can be a very key way in which they communicate online. With someone on the other side of the world. But I guess, is the risk of isolation or falling into excessive isolation exacerbated by this digital world they're living in now, compared to where we were even 20 years ago, even 10 years ago? Yeah,
definitely. I think you've had Nathan Wallace on and talked about these things, and he mentioned at one of his workshops around, if there's a balance of that socialising online but also face-to-face, that's okay, that's a good balance. But if they're only socialising online, that can be a problem. I think we need to be face-to-face with each other. That's what Big Buddy's about. I think we all need that ongoing face-to-face connection, and boys need that as well. So going out, being physical, being in your bodies, working as a team, doing problem solving together, sharing. I think that they're all things because people ultimately want to belong. I think when we talk about big buddies and their kind of attraction to our program, as guys think, oh, that seems pretty simple. I just need to, go and hang out with a boy for a couple of hours, have some fun. I want to have some fun on the weekend. And I think it's just that matter of fun, getting back to fun. So boys, we all need to have fun, but boys particularly need to sometimes get offline and get into, a physical environment, get into nature.
Yeah. Steve, I know your number of volunteers are down since COVID, and as we said, the aftermath of that event is just sort of still reverberating in many ways, isn't it, on people's lives, whether it's the need to work an extra job, whether it's exhaustion, whatever else. But I do think you've got a new program coming, so here's your chance to make a pitch.
Cool.
What sort of commitments involved, and who should think about it?
Sure. So we've got just launched our group program. This is for boys 14 to 17. So the one-on-one program is for 7 to 13-year-olds, and that's an ongoing commitment for at least 12 months for a big buddy. Our group programs for 14 to 17-year-olds, often those teenage boys don't want to hang out with a guy, week to week, but they will go and hang out with some peers, have some fun, do some adventure stuff, and there'll be some mentors alongside. So we've got two offerings for volunteers, whether it's a longer term commitment or a shorter term 8-week commitment to be part of our group program, which has just launched in Auckland, Tauranga and Wellington. So there are a couple of opportunities there for both the boys, so if you're a mum or a caregiver or a school that is interested in the group program for a teenage boy, or for a younger boy that might want some one-on-one connection, that's on offer as well.
Thank you. That's Steve Sobota, who is with Big Buddy, the organisation that matches boys needing a male role model in their life, a positive male role model in their life, with young men and older men. You could either be the big brother or you could be the grandfather figure.